Okay, so section 3, personal financial planning. So section 1, we're going to explain the purpose and steps of financial planning. We're going to talk about reliable sources of financial advice and describe ways you can protect your financial resources. So you want to make sure everything is protected for multiple reasons that we will go over. So, a financial plan is a set of personal goals and financial goals, along with steps and a timeline for reaching them. Give you a minute to write that down. So, a set of personal goals and financial goals, along with the steps and a timeline for reaching them. So, maybe graduating college, buying a car, buying a house. So all of those personal goals have financial goals along with them. If you want to go to college, what's that going to cost you? If you want to buy a car, what's that going to cost you? There's a price tag pretty much with everything. So your personal goals will help you determine your financial goals. Maybe it's to live comfortably during retirement. Well, what is comfortably for you? How much money does that mean you're going to need to have saved? So financial plans and budgets. So the steps, gather information when you're making a financial plan. So you get your cash flow statement, your net worth statement, your budget, any bank statements, anything you have that's relevant. So you get all of those documents together, and then you analyze that information. So look at it, take notes on what you see. Does your budget match your cash flow statement? If you're keeping track, or your budget analysis, how is that going? You budgeted $200 for groceries, but how much did you actually spend on groceries? So you're going to analyze that. Do you have any wiggle room? Do you have any extra money you can set aside for this? So you analyze your information, then you set your goals. So personal goals are what you want to achieve in your life. I think that's going to be on the next slide. Yeah, okay, so we'll get there. So step 3, 4, and 5 kind of have their own slides. So you don't need to write this down, but famous saying, it's a good one. He who fails to plan is planning to fail. So if you don't make a plan, then you're planning to fail. So when you set your goals for step 3, so again, you gather information, you analyze it, and then you can set your goals. So the first step is your personal goals, the things you want to achieve in your life. And then from that, you can set your financial goals, which are plans for how you will pay for your personal goals. Maybe it's a vacation, whatever it is. Maybe it's getting your own apartment, moving out of your parents' house. And then what's it going to cost you? Short-term goals. So these are the definitions in your book for short-term, intermediate, and long-term goals. Different sources will say them differently, but for the purpose of what we are doing, we're going to kind of go off of these. So short-term is things you expect to achieve within the year. Maybe examples might be a car, buying a phone, saving for vacation. Intermediate goals are the next 2 to 5 years. Maybe you want to buy a house in 5 years. For you guys, maybe it's to finish college. And then long-term goals are things you want to achieve more than 5 years from now. Maybe that's where buying a house falls for you guys since you're still in high school. Saving for children, your college, your retirement, those are going to be long-term goals. I'm going to go to this link. What do you guys think is the cost to raise a child? Any guesses? I just find it interesting because I know some of you, quite a few of you on your vision board said you wanted to have kids. It does seem infinite while it's happening. So let me. So here's this article, a couple of years close. So, and this is from 2017. So we know with inflation, it's even gone up. So the cost of raising a child tops over $260,000, and that's just for basics. And so, what they're calling basics is food, housing, clothing, transportation, healthcare, and health insurance. It's no frills, basic groceries, no vacations, no birthday parties, no electronics, things like that, that many of us are accustomed to, is kind of 260,000. This is just for informational purpose to think like, you know, if I have a goal and one of my long-term goals is to have a family, what's that going to cost me? And so then they say, you know, with all of the above, more expensive choices for clothing and food, life insurance. So this top one, that's not any name brand clothing, anything like that. And then deluxe perks, they're saying is about $750,000 to have childcare, college savings, education, sports, go on vacations, birthday parties. If you're interested, you can build your own, they call it a pampered child. And so you can go through and click which one of these things you think you would like in your lifestyle for your kids. Deluxe essentials, more spending on food and clothes, life insurance. Are you going to do vacations and recreation? Deluxe education, you know, private high school, math tutoring, paying for online SAT preps, college applications. So college applications are quite pricey. They add up. So you could go through and pick some of those and just see. So I did it, and I just went through and chose the ones that I don't remember what ones I chose, but see. So just kind of picking them, then just the ones I chose, there's 463,000. If you want to give them college education, you're adding in another $100,000. So just something to think about. All right, so let's go ahead and go back. So short term, within the year, intermediate 2 to 5 years, long term is more than 5 years. Some people define long-term goals as more than 10 years. Again, we'll just go with these definitions from the book to be consistent. So step 3 for financial planning is setting your goals. Step 4 is to develop a timeline and benchmarks. So a timeline is a visual display of how long it'll take to achieve each phase of a plan. And benchmarks are standards against which progress is measured. You know, so thinking kind of, you guys probably see this on maybe some projects or some essays. A timeline would be have your first draft in this Friday. So that's the timeline, and the benchmark is when you look at that first draft, where is it falling? So as you hit each benchmark, you're one step closer. And then step 5 is to implement and evaluate the plan. So you develop a plan, and then you have to follow through with it and look back at it. And especially for these long-term goals, a timeline and benchmarks are going to be important to make sure you're making progress. You know, if right now you're thinking, hey, I want to start saving to buy a house, then that's, you know, maybe 5-10 years down the road, you need to have baby steps in between there essentially to make sure it's happening. And maybe, you know, in 10 years you want to buy a house, but you're not going to start saving for it until after you graduate college. That's totally fine. That's realistic, right? Most people aren't going to save money to buy a house while they're in college. They're going to pay their way through college and do what they need to do. But then make sure you are evaluating it. Are things changing? Did you follow through, etc.? Okay, so that's coming up with your plan. And so this is an example of Bill Fong's financial plan. So he would like, his personal goal is to live in his own house in the country. So that's his goal. So financially, he needs to be able to buy this house. So his benchmarks are save money for the down payment and to get a job so that he can make the monthly payments. So he wants to save $12,000, and he says it's going to take him 5 years because he's going to set aside $200 per month and put it in a separate account so that he can't touch it. And then he's going to talk to a mortgage broker on the 15th. And then he's going to say within 2 years, he's going to get a job that makes enough money to make the monthly payments for his house. So just because he saves $12,000 for a down payment, you know, his mortgage, depending on where he's buying this house in the country, he's going to have to be able to pay for each month. So this is just an example. All right, so where can you get good financial advice? You can talk to a certified financial planner, a CFP, which is a professional consultant who provides financial advice. They're also known as financial advisors. They can help you develop financial plans and meet your goals. So they're going to look at every aspect of your financial life, your savings, your spending, your insurance, your retirement, everything there. You're usually going to have to pay them, right? They're not going to do that for free. And then there are other free options or cheaper options. Newspapers have financial advice. There's magazines, seminars and workshops. There are websites. So there's a lot of places you can go to get financial advice. Different people may have different opinions as well, and different values. All right, so how can you protect your financial resources? So you only want to deal with financial advisors and institutions that you trust. Beware of the economy and how it affects your finances, right? Like if you have a lot of money in the stock market and our economy is doing poorly and the stock market's going down, and that's where your retirement is, well, then you got to be careful. Keep good records and verify account balances regularly. We'll talk about that more next chapter when we talk about banking. Keep your financial records in a safe place. Choose strong passwords, keep them private. Store your financial information on a separate storage device, like a flash drive, not a hard drive. Beware of phishing, which is a common internet scam that uses email messages to deceive you, right? You might see them sometimes. They'll say there's somebody, and then if you actually look at the email, it'll not be that person. Or they say like, click here, and then you click here, and they're not accurate information. They might try to get you to verify your bank account. This is the IRS, things like that. Don't do it. And then also beware of identity theft. So identity theft is the use of your personal information by someone else without permission to commit fraud or other crimes. These are all links of videos. We are not going to watch all of them. We're going to start this bottom one. Is the only one. It's 4 minutes. We're only going to watch like 2 minutes. I think it's this one.
Identity theft.
Okay.
It's become the top consumer complaint in the U.S. with about 10 million victims every year.
And more children than ever are becoming victims. Rebecca Jarvis says that's one of the 5 things you need to know about ID theft. Rebecca, good morning.
Good morning to you as well.
So the first thing off the bat is parents just need to be aware that this.
They have to be aware, and they have to be aware that kids under 19 years old are a big target of identity theft. 8% of the identity theft that happens in this country is impacting people under the age of 19. Why is that? Well, it's because they don't really have a lot of credit history under their belt. They're not going out and applying for credit cards. They're not going out and applying for mortgages. So to know that it's happening to your child is hard to do, because until the kid is going to college, you're not really thinking about putting their name out for loans. What you need to do as a parent is get their credit history checked on a yearly basis, and also follow their Social Security report.
Which you get done for free, by the way, the credit check.
You can get that done for free, yes.
I'm surprised that you have to start checking. You should start checking, having your kids' identity theft checked even though they're not out there buying, just because. This is what I'm trying to say. I think it's so egregious when you take on kids and senior citizens.
It's
So when you say
disgusting,
children, it just
and they
gets
do
my
tend to
attention.
be one of the target groups because of who they are and what their habits are. And the fact of the
And
matter is,
got no
they're not out
record.
getting credit.
Okay, number 2, you said keep a close eye on benefits issue.
Okay. So I just found that one interesting. Again, that's pretty old, almost 10 years old, but it's just to say that identity theft can happen to anybody. It doesn't have to be an adult. I'm not saying I agree with them. It says check your kid, have your parents check kids' social security and credit report every year. I don't do that with my own kids. They're still pretty young. Obviously, my baby's younger than my son. So I'm not saying you have to do that, but be aware that it is something that can happen. If somebody gets a hold of your social security card or number, not your card, and it can really screw up your credit. And the problem with that identity theft, well, there's lots of problems, but is you have to then prove it wasn't you, which isn't always easy. And it might be easier if you're younger. And you're like, look, somebody opened this credit 5 years ago and I'm only 17 now. It clearly wasn't me. But it's assumed that it's you until you prove that it wasn't, which can just really screw things up. And if you're not finding out about it until you're going to, buy a car and they're like, oh, you have this bad credit and you didn't know that, that sucks. And you have to clear it up before you could buy the car. And it is not a quick and easy process. So just keep that in mind. There are a lot of programs out there and to check your social security card and number. I know some banks do it for free as part of their services, which we'll get into more next chapter also. But they just run a report once a month of your credit, and like I get an email that it says like no new accounts on your social security number or something like that. Because I would hate for that to happen to any of you. But that was the last slide. So yeah, I think that's it. I don't know if I have anything else. I was trying to look over that. So just make sure you are protecting your financial information. Make sure you are using those secured web pages that have the S on the end if you are applying for things online and giving out personal information. Passwords should be safe, things of that sort. With that being said, your homework tonight, remember, is a little bit shorter, but it jumps around. Make sure you're doing the problems 1 through 10, 13, 16, 17, 20. You also have that vocab worksheet. The vocab worksheet I assigned today. It's due Thursday at midnight. Hopefully I did it correctly so that after you complete it, whenever it is that you complete it, it should tell you which ones you got right and wrong and what the correct answer was. If you do it and it doesn't do that, let me know. I can still post the answer key. But I tried to set it up that way, but it's all weird for me because, it's new ways. And what I see on my end isn't what you guys see on your end. But that's all I have. Unless you guys have questions, you are free to go.